1,500 calorie diets do not work. Sure, you might lose a few pounds at first, but then your metabolism tanks, your energy crashes, your cravings go through the roof, and you pile the weight back on. But I know you've been told that you need to create a calorie deficit, that it's all about calories in versus calories out, that you need to move more and eat less. And that advice isn't wrong, but it is misleading. Today, I'm going to show you why these low-calorie diets don't work and how eating more is going to help you lose the fat and, more importantly, keep it off for good. So full screen the video and let's lock in. If you've been living off 1,500 calories and doing hours of cardio every single week, but the scales have stopped moving, then it's time for a new strategy. Starving your body might lead to temporary results, but it also creates long-term problems. And that's why most diets fail. Because when you severely restrict your calories, 4 things happen. Number 1, your body fights back. It's wired for survival, not aesthetics. And when you eat too little, your body slows down your metabolism to make it more efficient at conserving energy. And over time, this makes it a heck of a lot harder for you to lose weight. Number 2 is that you're going to feel like garbage. Low energy, brain fog, irritability, and of course, constant hunger. These are all signs that you're underfueled. But the worst one of all isn't any of those 4 things. It's the fact that you lose your drive. And what I mean by that is that everything just feels hard, whether that's getting yourself outside to go for a walk, or God forbid, even getting to the gym to do a hard workout. And then number 3 is that you're actually losing muscle, not fat. You see, without enough calories and without enough protein, your body actually breaks down the muscle to use it for energy, because energy is always going to be your body's number 1 priority. And this one is actually a bit of a double whammy, because the more lean muscle mass that you have, the faster your metabolism is. And that's because muscle is metabolic tissue, which means the more muscle you have, the higher your maintenance calories are, which means the more calories that you can eat and still be in a calorie deficit. And then, of course, number 4 is that you're just more likely to quit, because let's face it, no one can survive on salads and water forever. When you're constantly hungry and deprived, it's only a matter of time before you binge and ultimately give up. So this becomes a vicious cycle that most people fall into. They cut their calories, they feel tired and hungry, they binge, and ultimately they give up. And that strategy, whilst very common, is also very flawed, and it's very short term. What you want to do is think bigger, but not a little bit bigger. You want to think much bigger, because when we flip the script and focus on eating more of the right food, everything changes. Your energy levels skyrocket. Your workouts improve, you lose fat, you build muscle, and most importantly, you stick with it, because now you're not starving yourself. The problem is that we've all been told for years that the only way to lose weight is by eating less. But the truth is, the whole eat less, move more mindset not only is exhausting, but it isn't sustainable. At the end of the day, food is your body's fuel. You have to remember that the calorie deficit is also known as an energy deficit. And the bigger the deficit, the less energy you're going to have. The less energy you have, well, the less you're going to be able to do, right? And the less you do, the fewer calories you're going to burn. So yeah, we want to make sure that you're in a calorie deficit. But more important than that, we want to make sure that your deficit is sustainable. Not just sustainable for a couple of weeks, but sustainable for a few months. Because the chances are, if you've got 10, 20, maybe even 30 or 40 or 50 pounds to lose, this isn't going to happen overnight. But if you're following the right system and have the right strategy, you don't need to worry about speed. You just need to focus on the trajectory that you're on. And that's why I recommend that most of my clients aim to lose between 1 to 2 pounds of fat per week. It's not sexy, but it is sustainable. And a pound of fat might not sound like much, but this is what one looks like. And aiming to burn one of these, a pound of fat every single week, you're not going to find it difficult. But more importantly, you're not going to find it hard to stay consistent. And before you know it, the weeks, even the months have flown by and you've lost 10 and 20 pounds pretty effortlessly. To burn a pound of fat a week, you need to create a 3,500 calorie deficit, because that is how many calories are in one of these. Now, you can do that by sticking to a 500 calorie deficit every single day, because 500 multiplied by 7 days in a week is 3,500. So the maths is quite nice. And if you're brand new to a calorie deficit, then that could be a good idea because it helps to build the habit. But again, over a longer period of time, I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think it's realistic to expect you to hit the exact same number of calories every single day. Why? because you're not a robot. Every day is different and life will get in the way, whether it's traffic jams, kids, sickness, hangovers, train delays, whatever it might be. Some days you just won't be bothered about tracking your calories, and other days you're just going to really need that extra large pizza. So in the long term, you want something more flexible. So instead of stressing your target every single day, what I recommend you do is multiply your daily calorie deficit by 7. And by the way, if you don't know how to calculate your calorie deficit, because it is unique to every single person, it's based on your age, your weight, your height, your sex, and most importantly, how active you are as a person, you can go ahead and click the link under this video and use my completely free fat loss calorie calculator. I will send you your results straight away. And as I said, it's completely free. So if we were to do an example, let's say my daily calorie deficit was 2,000 calories. So let's keep the maths nice and simple. So what I would do is I would take 2,000 and multiply that by 7, which is 14,000. Now what I have is a weekly calorie budget. And it means that if I go over on one day, it's not a disaster. As long as I stay within my weekly budget, which, let's be honest, sounds a lot more sustainable and a lot more attractive than trying to hit the same number every single day, I'm still going to lose a pound of fat every single week. And considering this is how big just 1 pound of fat is, imagine what it looks like when you lose 10. This approach is flexible, is sustainable, and most importantly, I think, it doesn't make you feel like a failure when you mess up on one day. So zoom out, look at it as a weekly target, and don't stress about every day. Okay, so that covers how much you should be eating to create a sustainable calorie deficit and burn the fat that you want. But remember, we're aiming to fuel our bodies with the right food. But this is where a lot of people go wrong, because they've been told by 10 different people that there's 10 different perfect diets for them, whether it's keto, carnivore, vegan, Atkins, paleo, Mediterranean. It doesn't matter. The list is endless. But what those all are methods that sit under the principle of the calorie deficit. And again, the very definition of a diet is something that is restricting you on what you can eat or when you can eat or even how many times you can eat. But any form of restriction isn't going to work in the long term, because at the end of the day, we all like different things. We all lead different lives. So really, there is no superior or perfect meal plan. So I've come up with a system instead, a system with 5 very simple golden rules that anybody can follow. Number 1 is that you want your diet to be balanced. That's because all 3 macronutrients, your protein, your carbs, and your fat, play a very important role for your health. Protein fills us up, it stabilizes our blood sugar, it helps keep the cravings under control, and of course, it helps to build that lean muscle mass. Carbs are our body's preferred source of fuel, and fat is responsible for helping to support our immune system and our endocrine system, which is all of your hormones. Now, the macro mix that I like to recommend most people to go on is a 30-30-40 split. So that's 30% protein, 30% fat, and 40% carb. Let's do a quick live example. And what I'll do is put all of these numbers on the screen so that you can follow along. So let's say that we take that 2,000 calorie target. Now, there are 4 calories in 1 gram of protein. There are also 4 calories in 1 gram of carb, which is quite funny actually, because people always think that carbs are fattening when the reality is they are just as fattening as protein. But there are then 9 calories in every gram of fat. Now, that doesn't mean fat is bad. We just need to moderate it a little bit more carefully. So what we would do is take 30% of 2,000 for our protein and fat, which would be 600 each. For the protein, we would divide it by 4. So that would be 150 grams of protein. For the fat, we would divide it by 9, because remember, there are 9 calories per gram, which would be 66.6. So we'll just round it up and say 67. And then that leaves 40% of carbs. So we would take 2,000 divided by 40%. And that would be 800 calories. We then divide that by 4, which is 200 grams of carbs. So that's 150 grams of protein, 67 grams of fat, and 200 grams of carbs. Now, I'm not saying you should follow those exact numbers, because remember, this is all based on the fact that my calorie deficit target would be 2,000 in the example that I gave earlier. So the first thing you need to do is calculate your calorie deficit target. In fact, one thing I do when I give you your calorie deficit, when you use the free fat loss calorie calculator, is that I also give you your protein target. Now, being completely honest, those 2 are the most important. you can then make up the rest of your calories with your carbs and your fat. But if you want it to be a bit more strategic and a bit more laser focused, that 30-30-40 ratio split is a pretty good one. And then number 2 of the 5 principles is that you want your diet to be omnivorous. You don't want to buy into any of these diets. In fact, to be honest with you, they're less like diets and more like cults now, where you've got vegan at one end of the spectrum, which is slowly but surely dying out, and then carnivore, which seems to be growing in popularity at the moment. These 2 diets are incredibly extreme and, again, incredibly restrictive. Vegan, I would disagree with because it cuts out some of the best sources of lean protein, which you're going to find in animal produce, including eggs as well, and dairy in there. And then carnivore is cutting out fruit and vegetables and carbohydrates, essentially, which is absolutely insane. So what you want is something in the middle. And number 3 is that you want your diet to be nutrient dense. I think this one is becoming more important every single year. It's harder and harder to limit the amount of processed food that you're eating, but that really needs to be a focus. And a very easy way for you to do this is the next time you go to the supermarket or the grocery store, any product that you go to put in your basket or your trolley, pick it up, flip it over, and look at the ingredients list. As a very simple rule of thumb is that the fewer ingredients on that list, the better. A lot of the food that people are eating today is full of what we call empty calories. They count towards your budget, but they don't really do anything for you. You want to eat as much whole, nutrient-dense, and ideally single ingredient food as you can. These are going to give you more energy, they're going to optimize your gut health, and they're going to boost your immune system. And then golden rule number 4 is that you want it to be quick and easy. In an ideal world, you want to be able to make all of your meals from scratch in 20 minutes or less. I do not have time for 3-hour recipes, and I doubt you do either. And golden rule number 5, and probably the most important of them all, is that you really want to enjoy your diet. Because if you don't love what you eat, you're not going to stick to it long term. So for this one, a very simple way to remember it is by using the 80-20 rule, where you're eating 80% of your calories from the whole single ingredient, nutrient dense food that we just talked about, but then leaving room for 20% of your calories to come from the snacks and the treats that you love and look forward to, because it's that 20% that keeps this 80% sustainable. So you want to find the snacks and the treats that satiate your sweet tooth, that make you feel like you're cheating on your diet every single day. To give you a couple of examples, for me, that is always going to be some dark chocolate, which I have every single day without fail. And another one that I absolutely love at the moment is a Fanta Lemon Zero Sugar. It is beautiful, but it will take a little bit of trial and error for you to find what works for you. But trust me, this task is so worthwhile because once you've cracked it, you're golden. Anyway, okay, so we have fueled your body. Now that you're not starving yourself, you should have more energy. And now you've got more energy, we need to make sure that you're using it in the smartest way to burn the fat most effectively. But what does moving more actually look like? Well, I can tell you straight off the bat that it is not doing hours of cardio or going to the gym every single day. In fact, the most effective way to burn fat is to increase what we call your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Walking is the best way to do that. It's low impact, it requires no equipment, and it fits into pretty much every schedule. Plus, walking doesn't feel like a chore. It's something you can do while listening to a music, a podcast, phoning a friend, taking the kids out, walking the dog, you name it, you can do it. Walking boosts your calorie burn without exhausting your body. A brisk 45 minutes on your feet every single day is going to burn an additional 300 to 400 calories, depending on how big you are, because the bigger you are, the more calories you're going to burn. So if you aim to do that every day for a week, you're going to burn an additional 2,100 calories just from walking. Then we've got strength training. And strength training is a game changer when it comes to fat loss, primarily for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, we actually covered earlier in this video. When you are strength training, when you are resistance training, when you are lifting weights, you are building lean muscle. The more lean muscle mass that you have, the more metabolic tissue you have. The more metabolic tissue you have, the faster your metabolism and the higher your maintenance calories is, which means you can eat more calories and still burn fat at the same time. Remember, you are not lifting weights to burn fat. You are lifting weights to build the muscle. And unlike cardio, which only burns calories when you're actually doing it, strength training creates that afterburn effect, where your body is continuing to burn calories around the clock just to keep that muscle there. But like I said, you don't need to be going to the gym every single day or spending hours there when you do go. If you're short on time, 3 well-structured, full-body, 45-minute workouts is more than enough. Focus on compound movements like squats and deadlifts and bench presses and rows, because these are the exercises that target multiple muscles and the biggest muscles in your body. And the bigger the muscle, the harder your body has to work, the harder your heart and your lungs have to work to breathe the oxygen in and to pump the oxygen in the blood to that muscle so that it can contract. And then finally, what I would say is just to have fun with your movement, whether that's playing a sport with some friends, getting outside with your kids, or even having some more with your partner. Because when you fuel your body properly and when you start moving strategically, everything falls into place for you. Eating more of the right foods doesn't just help you to lose weight. It creates this powerful ripple effect in every area of your life. Because when you eat more, and when you eat specifically more of the right stuff, you have more energy. You wake up feeling energized rather than exhausted. That energy then carries into your workouts and even your mood. Suddenly, you're creating this virtuous cycle where all the habits that you're building become self-reinforcing. You go from everything feeling like a struggle to, why didn't I always do this? And then it becomes so much easier to stay consistent because you've built the momentum. And momentum is one of the few things that you can't buy. And as that momentum grows, you start to see results, which only builds even more momentum. This virtuous cycle makes healthy living addictive. I'm not going to sit here and BS you. It is hard at the beginning, but the more effort you put in and the more trust and faith that you have in the process, the easier it will become. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. But if you enjoyed this video, then I recommend you go ahead and watch this one next, because the chances are you're going to enjoy that one too. I'll see you in the next video.